say that hip hop is dead. No, it's not. It's just malnourished and underfed, y'all. And underfed, y'all. And
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you're tuning in from. Hello, everyone. My name is Rhonda Ramiro, and I'm with the Resist US-Led War movement. Welcome to the 2025 launch of our anti-militarism agenda. We're so happy that you were able to make it. Resist US-Led War movement is a global network of anti-war, anti-imperialist, and pro-peace organizations united on two calls. First, to resist US-led war. And by US-led war, we mean all of its different manifestations. It includes war and militarism, genocide, foreign invasions, occupation, sanctions, military exercises, border militarization, and other forms of violent repression enacted directly by or funded by the US or its allies. But equally important, or maybe even more important, our second point of unity is to build a just peace. So a peace based on justice, social equity, solidarity amongst peoples, including the recognition of the right to self-determination, economic and food sovereignty, self-defense of nations and oppressed peoples from reactionary aggression and violence. It's very simple. We are united against war and would like to build a just peace, a peace based on justice, building the broadest movement possible against the number one enemy of the people, US imperialism, and its pointed edge of war and militarism. So welcome again. Before we get started on the program, I do want to say that our program is being conducted today in three languages: English, French, and Spanish. And in order to ensure that everybody who is here can access the appropriate language for you, would like to give some instructions on how to access the different languages on Zoom. So I'd like to introduce Jacob, who will provide some instructions on our language, justice, and interpretation today. Jacob.
Hi, folks. So at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom screen on the right, you'll see a small globe. You may have to click the three dots for more if you have a smaller screen, but press the globe and select the language in which you'd like to listen to the webinar. If you run into any problems, please message our tech person. You'll see them named in the chat. So we will have one person speak at a time, and we'll use hand signals for speaking too fast and speaking too softly. Maybe I got those wrong, but we'll make hand signals. You can also use the chat to tell the speaker to slow down or to speak more loudly. For bilingual speakers, please feel free to switch languages, and we actually encourage you to speak in the non-dominant language, but please do not switch languages in the same sentence. The language the conversation is happening in can switch at any moment, so choose the language channel that you want to hear the content in. If there's any technical trouble, please don't suffer in silence. Message our tech person, who will be named in the participants list as tech. You can choose to turn off the original language and just hear interpretation on your language channel. So if you haven't yet done so, please choose a language channel. Instrucciones. En la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla de Zoom verá un pequeño globo terráqueo. Pulse sobre él y seleccione el idioma en el que desea escuchar el seminario web. Es posible que tenga que hacer clic en los tres puntos para acceder a más. Si tiene algún problema, envíe un mensaje a nuestro técnico. Verá su nombre en el chat. Hablará una persona cada vez. Utilizaremos señales con las manos para indicar que se habla demasiado rápido o demasiado bajo. También podemos utilizar el chat para pedir al ponente que hable más despacio o más alto. Si es bilingüe, no dude en cambiar de idioma. De hecho, le animamos a que hable en el idioma que no sea su lengua materna, pero lo rogamos que no cambie de idioma en la misma frase. El idioma en que conversamos puede cambiar en cualquier momento. Seleccione el canal de lenguaje que quiere oír. Si tiene problemas tecnológicos, por favor, diga algo. Mande mensaje a la persona de Tech cuyo nombre aparecerá en la lista de participantes como Tech. Puede elegir apagar el sonido del idioma original y solo oír a la interpretación en su canal. Si aún no lo ha hecho, elija un canal de idioma. Y por favor, por las personas que van a hablar, por favor, hablen despacito, para que los intérpretes puedan traducir correctamente. Des instructions. Donc, en bas de votre écran de Zoom, en français maintenant, à droite, vous verrez un petit globe. Appuyez sur le globe et sélectionnez la langue dans laquelle vous souhaitez écouter le webinaire. Il se peut que vous deviez cliquer sur les 3 points pour plus. Si vous rencontrez des problèmes, envoyez un message à notre technicien. Vous verrez leur nom dans le clavardage. Une seule personne parlera à la fois. Nous utiliserons des signes de la main pour signaler que vous parlez trop vite ou trop doucement. Nous pouvons également utiliser le clavardage pour dire à l'orateur de ralentir ou de parler plus fort. Pour les personnes bilingues, n'hésitez pas à changer de langue. En fait, nous vous encourageons d'ailleurs à parler dans la langue non dominante, mais ne changez pas de langue dans la même phrase. La langue dans laquelle se déroule la conversation peut changer à tout moment. Choisissez le canal linguistique dans lequel vous souhaitez entendre le contenu. En cas de problème technique, ne restez pas silencieux. Envoyez un message à notre technicien qui apparaîtra dans la liste des participants sous le nom de Tech. Vous pouvez choisir de désactiver la langue d'origine et d'écouter l'interprétation sur le canal de votre langue. Si vous ne l'avez pas encore fait, tout le monde est prié de choisir un canal linguistique. Et un petit message pour les locuteurs, s'il vous plaît, parlez lentement, puisque c'est difficile pour les interprètes de traduire si vous parlez trop vite. Just a quick reminder in English for the speakers, please speak somewhat slowly because it can be difficult for the interpreters to translate correctly. So, merci, thank you, gracias.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for interpreting today and explaining the instructions on using our different language interpretation features today. So once again, welcome, and I will try to remember to speak slowly. Definitely let me know, interpreters, if I go too fast. To introduce myself again, I'm Rhonda with the Resist US-led War Movement. And today we're introducing the anti-militarism agenda. So Resist US-led War Movement was founded in about 2018, following an international conference organized by the International League of People's Struggle and the International Women's Alliance. Back in 2017, I think the situation was very similar to what we're seeing today, although today things have actually gotten even worse. In 2017, the conference that was organized was called Solidarity and Fight Back, and it was a conference against war, militarism, and neo-fascism. All of those things were on the rise and intensifying under the newly elected Trump administration the first time. In the Philippines, there was the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. We also had Modi in India, Netanyahu still in Israel. There was a very clear fascist trend happening in the world and an intensification of militarization. It was agreed that there needed to be a movement built to take on this escalating militarism, war, and fascism in the world, but a very clear understanding that the number one threat when it came to war in the world was war led by the US, militarism led by the US and its allies. And that while different countries were engaging in war, it was because of, it was principally the US and its instigations of war and backing of militarist and fascist regimes that were the most dangerous and deadly to the people of the world and really the very existence of humanity on this planet. From that came the agreement that we needed to build a movement, and thus the Resist US-led War movement was born, with the 2 points of unity that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar: to resist US-led war in all its manifestations and to build a just peace, a peace based on justice and equity, self-determination, and liberation of all peoples and nations. So with that, we've been building the Resist US-led War movement for a few years now. In 2023, we launched our anti-militarism agenda based on some of the work that we had conducted with many of you on this call today and many of you whom we hadn't met yet at the time. This year, 2025, we see a renewed push, an escalation in the situation of war and militarism in the world and knew that it was time to relaunch this campaign platform with more clarity on the particular struggles out there to fight against and defeat US-led war and militarism. So in today's political situation, we do see that three fronts of US-led war have emerged, aimed at preserving the US's sole hegemony in the world. The US Western Alliance, including NATO for Eastern Europe, against its named adversary of Russia. The US-Israel Gulf Turkish Alliance against Iran, and an iron web of alliances in the Pacific, including those with Australia, the UK, the US, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and even India, all together in an escalating aggression against China and the DPRK. And at the same time, while these three main fronts of war have emerged, we know that this US aggression actually still operates all over the world, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in Africa, and that these contradictions, these three main fronts, actually have an impact on all the other conflicts happening in the world, all other manifestations of US-led war. And that this kind of rising and escalating aggression on the three fronts then pushes forward and makes worse the manifestations of war and militarism in all the other parts of the world as well. And the other thing that we know is that with this escalating war and militarism in the world, it's the people, the ordinary people, the grassroots, the working peoples of the world who are most impacted. It's not the government executives, it's not military generals, it's not the bankers or the business owners, weapon suppliers who are all profiting from war who are most affected. It's the people whose land is being destroyed, who are being forcibly displaced from their homelands, who are starving to death, who are being killed by bombs and ground warfare. Those are the people. We are the people being most impacted by war. And that it's the people also who are rising up to fight against it. We're also reminded that it's always been the people who are able to defeat the US-led war machine. While US-led war tries to make itself out to be undefeatable, enriching itself and investing in more high-tech warfare and technology, it's not invincible. It can be defeated. Just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Vietnamese people's victory over the US in 1975, the defeat of US imperialism in Vietnam. That victory shows that it is possible. People united, organized, and determined to fight for their liberation can defeat a hegemon. So we see that happened 50 years ago. We also see now in the resistance in Palestine that the people, again, united and organized and determined to fight for their liberation, can take on and will continue to take on until they are liberated from the Zionist occupation. They can take on US-backed adversary like the Zionist entity, and they will win. So today, with the launch of our anti-militarism agenda, we are bringing together many struggles on many different fronts, but all united against fighting war and militarism in the world. We will have some people on today who will talk about their different struggles. We're actually very honored to have 8 different speakers who will be bringing to life the different struggles that we've put into our anti-militarism agenda, different ways that people are fighting against the different aspects of the war machine, and they come from all parts of the world. We're very excited to have people from Asia and the Pacific, from Jordan and from Puerto Rico, from Canada, from the US, from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and from Europe. all talking about the different ways in which they're fighting against US-led war and militarism and fighting for the liberation of all of our people, their people, our people, all of our struggles around the world. So to start us off, I just wanted to say that the anti-militarism agenda never would have come into being without many organizations who contributed to the contents of it. So on our screen now, I just want to acknowledge the dozens of organizations that we consulted with over the past months, that we've worked with over the past years, those who are on the ground fighting and teaching us about what it means to resist war, what it means to fight for liberation in all parts of the globe. I wish we could have all of them in this webinar today, but their struggles do live on in our anti-militarism agenda, and we hope that people will use the agenda as a tool to continue to fight against war. So with that, I'd like to invite Carly Brook to tell us a little bit more about the anti-militarism agenda itself, what it contains and how we will use it, or how we intend to use it as a tool for building the movement. So Carly Brook, member of the Resist Secretariat, floor is yours.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to share this space together. This project, the Anti-Militarism Agenda, has been such an incredible tool, and we hope that it can serve as a roadmap or a guide or a direction that can bring us closer together and help us grow and deepen and strengthen the mass movement against US-led war. Like Rhonda said, it's really the people who are facing firsthand the military bases on their islands, the drone strikes in their neighborhoods, the strafing of their forests, the destruction of their farming lands, the military development and weapons testing in our backyards. It's the people who are there fighting back against militarism every day who should help us set the direction for the global anti-war movement. What this agenda aims to do is lay out, based on consultation, based on these growing relationships, an agenda of key struggles that are being waged around the world. And these struggles represent specific pressure points that when we strike them enough times with united force, with each other, arm in arm, we can really deal blows to the system of US militarism until it's brought down and a new one of just and lasting peace can be built in its place. This agenda is written to demonstrate the impacts on the people every day, what people experience in this culture of US militarism, in this economic system and political system of US militarism. And then it shows how people are already fighting back, what lessons we can draw, what experiences we've learned from that show the true power of people to change their conditions and fight against the root cause of war, which is US imperialism. We're really grateful for all these organizations who contributed, and we're excited to bring ourselves all closer together to build a conversation platform, to build a campaign platform where we can take these calls and build them into action. So this agenda will help us to build up mobilizations and action around key calls. And these calls, for us, it's very important that these calls come from the ground, from the very real and live struggles and organizing work that we're doing every day to fight against US-led war and to get the boot off of the neck of the people all over the world. Next slide, please. And it has been a very rewarding and humbling and exciting experience to carry this agenda forward in the first edition. So from 2022 to 2025, Resist US-led War conducted its first anti-militarism agenda, and this can hopefully give an idea of how we can wage and build these struggles together. So some key examples for us were the Cancel RIMPAC campaign. Maybe put it in the chat if you were there with us in San Diego, or if you have fought against RIMPAC in your own country. It's the Rim of the Pacific exercises where 26 militaries led by the United States wage horrific war drills in the Pacific in occupied Hawaii. RIMPAC shows us how far the US is willing to go to flex its power, intimidate the entire Pacific, try to control the Pacific. But there are people in every country around that region that are saying no to RIMPAC, saying no to these war games. And this summit and mobilization in San Diego was building upon the legacy of Hawaiian Kanaka Maori organizers who were opposing RIMPAC on their occupied lands for many decades. So we'll be preparing ourselves to build on this and fight against RIMPAC again in 2026. This campaign platform, the anti-militarism agenda, also led us to find mobilizations against military air shows. So if you also hate the Blue Angels flying overhead or the Thunderbirds flying over your neighborhoods, waking up your children, stressing out your your elders, and polluting our environment with gallons and gallons of jet fuel and dangerous accidents. These campaigns against military air shows said, we won't glorify war anymore in our neighborhoods, in our names. These are propaganda shows led by the weapons industry, like Boeing, to show people that war is not a family-friendly event, and we can't tolerate these propaganda games. Another campaign coming out of the anti-militarism agenda has been the Cut Ties with War Profiteers campaign, and this has blossomed into an entire network of people fighting against the profiteers themselves, against the corporations who make the bombs, the jets, the drones that are being used every day in Gaza, that are being used against our communities around the world. And from student encampments and the student intifada and the movement to fight against war profiteering in our education system, to the arms shows and weapons expos like CanSec and NEDS in the Netherlands and Land Forces in Australia, we are mobilizing our network to shut down war profiteering. And that campaign will only grow from here as we need to escalate against these targets. So I'll also mention this campaign has led us to confront some of the biggest alliances led by the US. And we can only do that if we grow our movement. So in 2022, we were able to converge against the G7 as the largest Western alliance representing US imperialism in Hiroshima, Japan. And it was such an affront to people around the world calling for peace that the G7 dared to meet on the rubble of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima. And in fact, several of us were blocked from the country even to enter by the Japanese government because they don't want us united. They don't want us to be able to link arms. We're fighting against the G7, and we're fighting again this year in Canada, which Yaz will speak about in a little bit. And then we have to mention NATO as the largest US-led military alliance around the world. This is an aggressive, um, occupying, counterinsurgency and war alliance for NATO. And as we gathered in Washington, D.C. in 2024, last summer, in the heat, to converge and fight and say, we're against NATO and we need to resist these wars of aggression. We'll do it again this year in The Hague with our Resist NATO coalition. So these are some examples and some of the ways that we need to build a platform for coordination and solidarity among our struggles. And now it's time to reinitiate this campaign, like Rhonda said. It's coinciding with the re-election of Donald Trump to the US presidency, a racist and fascist American president, and the rapid new developments in the world situation. This war machine is unleashing untold levels of barbarity with hundreds of people dying overnight in Gaza. Entire parts of the Gaza Strip being leveled to the ground, with massacres going on, and direct occupation happening on so many people's homelands. We really need these tools to come together and link up our forces to fight back. And one thing we know is that no matter where the war machine rears its head, whether it's here in the belly of the beast or it's on the front lines of the wars all around the world, there are people here ready to stand up, have each other's backs, build a mass movement, and strike back. So I'll introduce you to some of the tools in the agenda. If you go to the next page. The agenda has a few different components. First, it starts off with tactics, because what we need are people waging campaigns, organizing on the ground wherever we are, and fighting against US-led war. So we need a multinational, multi-sectoral, multi-issue mass movement that resists all manifestations of US war and militarism. There's not one single correct way to fight against US war. We know it takes tactics that are appropriate to our conditions. It takes understanding and readiness to learn from each other. So these movements where people are on the front lines fighting to defend their land and livelihood, dignity and sovereignty are the core of this movement, these liberation struggles that are fighting to end the root cause of war. To us, that's our guide for the peace movement. At the same time, whether we have Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Elbit Systems, Northrop Grumman, this war machine is stretched all over the globe. So all of us have an opportunity to target it wherever we are. There's some component of the war machine in our backyard. And that's where we can fight to shut down the war machine. We know that for us, the US militarism is a key target. So we're calling for the US out of everywhere. We're inspired by the campaigns to kick the US out of the Philippines. We're inspired by the US out of Korea campaign. And we're inspired by the African nations that have removed French and Western and US bases from their land, from their countries, and asserted and reclaimed their sovereignty. So we unite our peace movements around the world with the demands of liberation movements that are struggling for self-determination, peace, and justice. And finally, we're struggling for a just peace. We know that we can overturn the system of imperialism that's at the root of war, occupation, and militarism. And we need a new system that has a viable alternative that really engenders peace. So we stand with those resistance struggles, asserting their national liberation to end once and for all the system at the root of US-led war. All right, next slide, please. So the agenda itself was developed and synthesized. We brought all these calls from the ground together, the very particular fights against particular bases and drone exercises and borders and specific companies, and pulled out general calls to action. So we invite everyone here to take up these calls to action together. So we'll lay them out, and we encourage you to read all the details. There's specific information and facts about each case in the agenda here in the chat. So please download it, use it, print it, make use of the information and share it so that we can, through education and action, advance these calls to action. So here's our calls. This is what we're calling for in the anti-militarism agenda, and we hope you'll join us. End wars of aggression and imperialist wars, resist military occupation, end military alliances, shut down overseas bases and U.S. commands, end U.S. military agreements, stop support of puppet and proxy regimes, end counterinsurgency, so-called counter-terror warfare and state repression, end joint military exercises and trainings, fight weapons companies and arms sales. We're calling for reparations, cleanup, and justice for victims of war and the weapons industry, end economic warfare, food blockades and sanctions, fight border militarization and criminalization of migrants, and stop production of high-tech warfare. So these calls together comprise a movement that can build strength to fight against many fronts of US-led war. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see some different ways that you can access the agenda. So you can go to our website, you can download the agenda. There's a text version, there's a formatted version with a pamphlet. There's also a printable zine or booklet version. So we hope that it could be used, and you can just screenshot one page and use it in your presentation if that's what will help build the movement. It's to be used. So we hope that we can invite you to help us get it out there. So the agenda itself is one tool. The second tool on the next slide is a calendar of action. So this calendar is an opportunity for us to take globally coordinated actions together. As we build it out, we think that we can provide opportunities to all mobilize together in our own countries, in our own places, but to grow and build out our struggle. So coming up this spring and summer, we hope people will mobilize for African Liberation Day, May 25. Please join us in The Hague or mobilize in your countries against NATO during the summit, the NATO summit in The Hague, and join our counter summit on June 21st and mobilizations on June 22nd. Please join us and mount protests against military air and water shows, and join our partners like Veterans for Peace and Resist US-Led War in these mobilizations. You can learn more about their climate and militarism project there. We hope that all of us can fight against the threat of nuclear war and honor the legacy of those who died in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings by the United States at the end of World War II, August 6 and 9, and take to the streets in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day and struggle for land rights and sovereignty. And then please mobilize August 14 for justice for comfort women at the end of World War II. This struggle is ongoing. There's more dates on the calendar, as well as specific days for solidarity per country. And what's really important to us is we want to hear from you. We want to know what mobilizations you're calling for. How can we amplify those calls? So you can register your action for the anti-militarism agenda. Anything that joins with these calls to action, we'd love to hear what you're planning. So the calendar is part 2. Next slide, please. And then part 3 is to take action. Let's fight together. We can unite, coordinate, and mobilize together around the world against shared targets. So whether that's a day of action against drone warfare, and we all take our struggles up that way, whether it's all of us mobilizing around one particular cause in solidarity, whether it's taking action against the same companies or related issues, we can do that together. So we'll produce toolkits, and we'll also invite you to share your tools, your information education, so we can publicize that and spread the word and bring more people into this fight. So with that, I'll wrap up and pass it back to Rhonda. But yeah, we know that by uniting our struggles against all aspects of US-led war and militarism, we can unite the people themselves, ourselves, to confront the war machine and the imperialist system and directly challenge its existence. So by ending imperialism, the root causes of war and militarism will be gone. And this united front of all the world's people winning our liberation, one struggle at a time, can end imperialism and US war. So yeah, that is our agenda. We hope it will advance from here all together. Thank you. Pass it back to you, Rhonda.
Thank you so much, Carly. So is everybody ready to hear from our speakers from around the world? I think Carly told us more about the agenda. You can please use it as a tool, download it from resistusledwarmovement.com or use it online, either one. But please go out there and continue your struggles and take up and act in solidarity with the various struggles which are in the anti-militarism agenda. We're ready now to hear from our speakers from around the world who will be talking specifically about the struggles that they're waging on the ground and ones in which all of us here can also be in solidarity. Our first speaker, very honored to welcome Jean Orsolino, based in the Philippines, from Courage. So Courage is an acronym. It stands for the Confederation for Unity, Recognition, and Advancement of Government Employees in the Philippines. It's an organization of government workers in the National Democratic Movement. Courage believes workers are not only advocates for a living wage, job security, and workers and human rights, but more importantly, advocates for the fight for a just and lasting peace. Welcome, Jean. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rhonda. Comrades, colleagues, good evening from us here in the Philippines. Good morning and good afternoon elsewhere. Today, I speak before you to discuss a pressing issue that continues to shape the lives of Filipinos, particularly those in the countryside: the growing militarization of our nation and its consequences for our people. The Philippines has long been a strategic military partner of the United States, with the alliance rooted in agreements such as the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. This relationship has evolved over the decades, culminating in exercises like the recent Balikatan, which took place from April 21 to May 9 of this year. And this year's iteration was historic in scale, involving over 14,000 troops and showcasing advanced weaponry such as the Typhoon missile system and the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, or the NMESS. While proponents argue that Balikatan strengthens national security and regional stability, we must examine its impact on ordinary Filipinos. The countryside, often overlooked in policy discussions, bears the brunt of these exercises as communities struggle with disruptions to their daily lives. Militarism in the Philippine countryside has manifested in various ways, particularly affecting indigenous communities and rural populations. Here are some specific instances. Indiscriminate aerial bombings. Recent reports indicate a disturbing rise in aerial bombings in rural communities. In the Cordillera region, consecutive aerial bombings carried out by the military as part of counterinsurgency operations have impacted approximately 2,700 residents in Barangay Maling and neighboring barangays. Similar attacks have been reported in other areas, including Abra and Ilocos Sur in 2024 and in 2025 in Mindoro and Bukidnon, where military offensives have displaced families and caused widespread destruction. According to human rights group Karapatan, there were approximately 10 incidents of aerial bombings in rural communities in 2023, displacing around 20,000 individuals, many of whom were forced to abandon their farms. 7 of these bombings occurred in ancestral lands of indigenous peoples, areas rich in natural resources. Militarization also targets indigenous communities. For example, the Tumandok people in Panay Island faced violent repression in 2020 when 9 members were killed in a joint police and military operation. And this targeting continues. They had been opposing the Halaor Dam project, which threatened to displace over 17,000 people and cause massive flooding. Another instance, militarization to protect corporate interests. Indigenous territories are often militarized under the guise of counterinsurgency, but in reality, they serve to safeguard large-scale mining, mega dams, and logging projects. Those who resist are frequently labeled as terrorists or communist sympathizers to justify violent attacks. And the recent one is the Balikatan exercises, which displaced fisher folk. The Balikatan 2025 exercises disrupted fishing activities in Zambales, where fisher folk already struggle with Chinese incursions into the West Philippine Sea. Fishing and related livelihoods remain under threat due to military drills and geopolitical tensions. Beyond the immediate effects, militarization reinforces an imperialist agenda. The presence of foreign troops and military assets on Philippine soil raises concerns about sovereignty and the long-term implications of the defense agreements. The recent Balikatan exercise was framed as a deterrent against external threats, particularly from China. Yet, it also serves as a reminder of how global superpowers use smaller nations like the Philippines as pawns. For government workers like us, the integration of cyber defense into Balikatan highlights the need for updated policies on digital security and intelligence sharing. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts must be strengthened to ensure that military exercises do not escalate tensions in the region. As we reflect on these realities, let us ask ourselves, what kind of security do we truly seek? Is it one that prioritizes military strength or one that safeguards the well-being of our people? The answer lies in a national defense strategy that upholds sovereignty while ensuring that the interests of ordinary Filipinos, especially those in rural communities, are not sacrificed in the name of geopolitical maneuvering. The National Democratic Movement in the Philippines leads the resistance against any and all forms of militarization in the urban and rural communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jean. It was great to hear about both the struggle for national democracy against imperialism that's being waged on the ground in the Philippines, as well as to hear more precisely about the ways in which the U.S. is waging its war on the people. So many places in our anti-militarism agenda actually touch on the specific issues that you were discussing about the different military agreements, about the bases, the counterinsurgency, the rising fascist regimes. Militarism doesn't manifest in only one particular way, but in many different ways in the Philippines and in many other places, but so also the people's resistance. So thank you, Jean, so much. Our next speaker also comes from the Pacific, Nake Flores. She spoke with us live on our launch event 2 days ago, but it would be about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for her right now, so she's not able to join live. But we do have a video message from Nake Flores with Protehi Guahan, which is a direct action group dedicated to community education and activation for the protection of natural and cultural resources impacted by military and other harmful activities in Guahan. Putehi Guahan stands in solidarity with communities throughout the Marianas Islands and the Pacific for the prevention of environmental degradation and destruction of sacred and native lands, and promoting the continued pursuit for the return of ancestral lands, self-determination, and decolonization. I'm sorry she's not able to join us live, but I'm very excited to play this recording from Nake now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nake Flores. I'm a member of Protehi Guahan, and it's an honor to be here with all of you today and stand in solidarity with you against our struggle against U.S. imperialism and the war machine that is plundering and plaguing our planet. Guam is an unincorporated territory and military colony of the United States, and I'm a descendant of the indigenous Chamorro people who have lived in the Marianas Archipelago for over 4,000 years. It is impossible to overstate the consequences we are forced to endure because of US colonization and militarization and the unjust policies and laws which fail to protect us from avoidable harm and obstruct our sovereignty. In Guam, our decolonization has been stalled for over 126 years, and our people have suffered numerous harms since the United States took colonial control in 1898, including displacement from massive land seizures for military installations after World War II, massive ecological destruction, and illnesses linked to vast military contamination. These harms are aggravated today by a massive US military expansion in Guam, including the construction of a new Marine base, live fire training and urban warfare ranges, and other installations at sites of great importance to us. These projects pose great risk to our sole source aquifer that provides our island with up to 85 to 90% of our drinking water. The Guam Missile Defense System is being built by Lockheed Martin and will include 20 sites around the island, all of which already contain hazardous military waste. Regular war games also pose harm, including detonation of thousands of pounds of explosives in our surrounding waters, excessive noise pollution, and other forms of violence. A divert airfield is being built in Tinian in the Northern Marianas Islands for use in the case that Guam is devastated by conflict. This is the exact same location where the planes launched carrying the atomic bombs that devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. The islands of Saipan and Rota are now also targeted for expanded military infrastructure. And in his recent visit to Guam, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth secretly met with the president of the Federated States of Micronesia, where he discussed funding to expand military infrastructure in Yap. In Palau, there are currently 6 US military projects that include massive land clearing for airstrips and radar facilities, all happening without any environmental impact assessments and in clear violation of both federal and Palauan laws. And there will be a call to action coming up for folks to access a toolkit and submit comments in opposition to the projects in Palau. The hypermilitarization of our Micronesian region sets us up as the island chains and sites of US force projection, also making us first strike communities. The desecration and destruction of our islands for military expansion is directly connected to the historical and continual violence taking place in the Philippines, Okinawa, Hawaii, Korea, and the genocides in Palestine, the Congo, and Sudan, as well as the resource extraction and human exploitation taking place around the world, including the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit relatives. Uninterrupted colonization in the territories is unquestionably interconnected with the violent oppression and erasure of Black and Indigenous peoples everywhere, ultimately impacting our rights to life, health, and food, as well as our cultural survivorship. Let us come together to fight and determine a future that aligns with our values for life and genuine security, and not those defined by strategic US military interests and occupation. I'd like to end here with a video of our protests that took place during Pete Hegseth's recent trip to the region. We joined communities from Hawaii, the Philippines, and Japan, who also protested his visit to the Pacific and Asia. Suha in our language means scram or get out, and you'll see that in our messaging to Hegseth. I look forward to our continued collaboration and our struggle together toward liberation and justice. Sizos Masi, and thank you all. And I will share that video now. Sorry, and I apologize. I think the audio might have cut off there, but thank you all so much. Sizos Masi. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Suha, US out of everywhere. We really thank Nick for her words and for sharing with us the struggles of the people of Guahan. But not only that, but actually drawing the connections between what the people in Guahan have been experiencing since 1898 to the struggle of people around the world against the offensives of the US and its allies, who, and as Nick boiled it down, so eloquently, are after resources. They're wanting to hold on to and grab and use and exploit all the resources that they can to enrich a certain few and to put everybody else by the wayside, right? But it's the people rising up who will always be victorious in the end, no matter where we are. So thank you to Nake and Putehiguan for your words and your video and the very militant and inspiring action against Hegseth. I'm very excited to call on our next speaker, who is coming to us from another place colonized by the US, from Puerto Rico. It's my honor to introduce Sonia Santiago Hernandez with Madres contra la Guerra. Sonia is a psychologist by profession. She founded Mothers Against War, or Madres contra la Guerra, on May 1st, 2003, International Workers' Day, having a son fighting in Iraq. He joined the armed forces because he was unemployed, like so many people, young people, who believe in the dream of militarism that ends up turning into a nightmare. Madres contra la Guerra's mission is framed within the context of the defense of human rights of both the populations of the occupied countries and the military. MCG is a pacifist, anti-militarist, anti-imperialist organization that fights to prevent the recruitment of youth and in defense of invaded peoples. And MCG also fights against genocide. It's my honor to introduce Sonia. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, comrades. This is Sonia Santiago from Puerto Rico. When I prepared for this, I said, how am I going to resume so many things that have happened? Well, Puerto Rico was invaded by the United States in 1898. Subsequently, in 1917, they imposed the US citizenship right before the First World War. They inscribed over 200,000 Puerto Rican men and brought many of them to the First World War. I'm sorry to say that over 18 of them died of cold in Germany. This was horrible. Since then, more than 1,000 Puerto Ricans have died in US-led wars, and many have been maimed, and their families have been really affected by this. But let me tell you a bit about resistance. We are in the struggle of resistance. Even when they imposed the US citizenship, over 200 Puerto Ricans decided not to accept it. They were banned from education, from jobs. They couldn't do anything. But they decided to maintain it. In the 1960s, Puerto Ricans started to join the Vietnam War. Over 48,000 Puerto Ricans were brought to Vietnam. I was a very young, I was a student at the university. I was 17, 18, and we organized. And we were able to have hundreds of Puerto Rican men, youngsters, burning their military inscriptions. Not too long ago, I was walking in San Juan, our capital, and a youngster of my age asked me, said, "You saved my life." And I said, "Me? Yes, you did, because you talked to me because I had the ROTC uniform, and you spoke with me, and you said, 'Don't go.' And I listened to you because the way you talk made sense. And many in my unit came dead or are crazy." My husband was Black, poor, uneducated in New York, and he was brought to Vietnam, and he stayed there. We recently went to Cuba, and he begged forgiveness from the Vietnamese ambassador in Cuba. That's his picture right there. And you know what? Right next to me, to your left, is Pablo Paredes. Pablo Paredes is the first soldier that decided to become a conscientious objector in the Iraq War. And he stood, and we developed a campaign. You know what? My son, Javier, joined the military, to my regret, to our regret. And he was one of those soldiers that went to Iraq on that terrible March 19, 2003. And he stayed there for 18 months. He joined the military because he was fooled by the military recruiter who told him that his debt, the student debt, was going to be forgiven if he joined the military. Horrible. That's the way they take the youngsters. So, on International Workers' Day, the year 2003, I founded Mothers Against the War. We have advised hundreds of families. We go to military recruiters offices and we speak with the people that come, to the youngsters, to their parents. We go to schools, we go to universities. We go to the military bases here. Let me tell you a bit about military bases in Puerto Rico. In the year 1909, Theodore Roosevelt came to Puerto Rico and he loved Puerto Rico. And he loved a little town called Ceiba, which is next to the ocean. And he said, this is a good place to build a naval base. And indeed they did. Unfortunately, it is called Roosevelt Roads. Not true. Those are not Roosevelt roads. Those are Puerto Rican roads. They have built a lot of military bases, and we go to those bases and we protest. They have no right to be here. They have no right to take our youngsters to fight their terrible wars. I get emotional because you guys are the future. I appreciate this. And let me tell you, Puerto Ricans have also been the subject of genocide. In the year 1937, a U.S. governor in Puerto Rico called Blanton Winship instituted Planned Parenthood officers. He made it into law, even though in the United States that was forbidden. So they started a campaign to sterilize our women. And by the year 1968, 24% of our women in childbearing ages were sterilized. So we protest sterilization, we protest genocide, we are in resistance. They used a little island called Vieques for military purposes for over 60 years, but we went into their fields. The people of Vieques, along with good people, pacifists from around the world, and from Puerto Rico, we were able to get the Marine out. They no longer are in Vieques or Culebra, which was another town where they had military practices, including NATO. How dare they invade us? At some point, over 35% of our land was occupied by military bases. So we are into the struggle. We go into the streets. That's my message to you. You have to stay in the streets. And we have, in solidarity with Palestina, we have a weekly picket line in front of the Israeli consulate. One of your workers here, Bicho, has been with us. So has Tamara, my daughter, who's listening to what we are doing here. And it is every Tuesday at 4 p.m. in front of the U.S. Israeli consulate. If you want to know more about Madres contra la Guerra, we have a blog Madres contra la Guerra, blogspot.com. You can join in our activities, and thank you for this solidarity. The people united will never be defeated. Up with the struggle.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Thank you so much, Sonia, for being here, drawing the connections, showing us how you act in solidarity, but also telling us about your victorious struggles, the victorious struggles of the Puerto Rican people against Vieques, and the continued struggle of MCG against the recruitment of more of our youth into the military. So inspiring to have you here. Thank you. Before I introduce introduce our next speaker, I'd like to remind everybody that we are conducting this webinar in English, Spanish, and French. And our next speaker will be coming to us from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and will be speaking in French. And so if you haven't chosen your language channel that you'd like to listen to the webinar in, please do so now so that you won't miss out on anything that our next speaker has to say. Very, very excited to introduce today Pilier, who is with La Lucha. La Lucha is a Congolese citizen movement that was launched on May 1st, 2012 in Goma, Democratic Republic of the Congo, following a fed-up feeling among young people who were shocked, outraged, and revolted by the country's general chaos, the absence of the state in providing answers to basic primary needs. I think many of us can relate to that. A government who neglects its people and is out for its own interest of the few, of the elite in power. Not so much news comes to us from the DRC. And so we're so excited and honored to be introducing here today Pilier with La Lucha. Pilier, the floor is yours.
Allô? Oui, on est là. Bonsoir à tout le monde, bonsoir à tous et à toutes. Je suis Pilier Chikundula, activiste militant de la Lucha, un mouvement né en République démocratique du Congo, précisément au Nord Kivu. Tel que vous le savez, la situation sécuritaire actuelle au Nord Kivu n'est pas bonne, n'est pas quand même comme d'habitude. Il y a les terroristes du M23 soutenus par le gouvernement rwandais via les autres grandes puissances à travers le monde, comme les États-Unis, comme la Grande-Bretagne, la Pologne, il y a aussi la France, l'Union européenne et tout consort. Nous intervenons ici tout simplement pour dire que trop, c'est trop, avec la militarisation de plusieurs forces, de plusieurs troupes onusiennes, surtout en République démocratique du Congo. Et cette lutte, on ne l'a pas commencée hier ou avant-hier. C'était une lutte de longue date, tout juste après la naissance de la Lucha ou la création de la Lucha. 2 ans après, la Lucha avait lancé des actions pour dire oui au départ de la MONUSCO, pour lutter que la MONUSCO puisse quitter la République démocratique du Congo. Et actuellement, cette mission paraît comme une mission inefficace, comme des troupes qui étaient sans aucun bilan, sans des résultats sur terrain, pendant que leur mission était de ramener la guerre à la République démocratique du Congo ou à l'est de la République démocratique du Congo. Et actuellement, nous sommes en train de parcourir une situation une mauvaise situation par rapport à ça. Je pense que depuis 2019, la Lucha avait lancé une campagne intitulée Bye Bye MONUSCO. Et cette campagne qui visait que la MONUSCO ou soit les contingents des Nations Unies, les casques bleus, doivent quitter la République démocratique du Congo le plus tôt possible. Et voilà, une chose qui n'était pas faite, et ça nous a rendu de mauvais services. Et voilà qu'en 2022, il y a eu encore lancement de campagnes MONUSCO dégage avec les autres structures des jeunes, les étudiants, les autres mouvements des jeunes qui sont rejoints à la lucha pour dire que la MONUSCO doit quitter le sol congolais. En ce qui concerne la rébellion, soit les terroristes du M23 soutenus par les Rwandais actuellement, notons que nous, on disait que la MONUSCO doit quitter le sol congolais parce qu'on savait que la MONUSCO cherchait toujours à laisser le gouvernement congolais à négocier avec les terroristes du M23. La MONUSCO, soit les Nations Unies et ses forces, soutenaient le dialogue avec les terroristes du M23. Et par exemple, avec les États-Unis qui se dit non, il ne peut pas, il ne négocie pas avec les terroristes. Mais on ne sait pas si réellement comment ils peuvent dire à un État souverain comme la République démocratique du Congo à négocier avec les terroristes. Entre-temps, il y a notre gouvernement de médiocres qui pensait que c'est mieux d'amener les autres troupes de la SADC, ou soit de l'EAC, East Africa Community, et les autres de la région d'Afrique, de l'Union africaine, et se sont présentés, des troupes se sont présentées dans la ville. Et ces troupes étaient toujours inefficaces. Et nous, on demandait à ce que les troupes, toutes ces troupes ne puissent pas venir à la République démocratique du Congo, précisément dans la ville de Goma. Et c'est après des grandes actions, après plusieurs actions, en 2022 qu'on y est revenu encore avec des actions de grande envergure. On est allé même jusqu'à à s'installer devant les installations de la MONUSCO, ou soit des casques bleus. Et ces forces tiraient même à bout portant nos frères d'élite, nos camarades d'élite. Il y avait eu, par exemple, à Goma, il y avait eu plus de 80 morts à travers la République. Perte de vies humaines, 80, il y a à Beni, à Butembo, il y a eu des morts à Beni, à Butembo, à Kalemi, à Goma, n'en parlons pas, tout simplement parce que les jeunes disaient bye bye MONUSCO. Et c'est après de telles actions que le gouvernement congolais, avec la représentante des Nations Unies, Bintou Keïta, qui nous ont amené leur rhétorique en nous disant que non, voilà, bientôt là, les derniers, ils ont promis que les derniers casques bleus quittera la République démocratique du Congo en date de décembre 2024. Et voilà, ça n'a pas été fait. Jusqu'à présent, la MONUSCO, c'est la MONUSCO qui collabore actuellement avec les terroristes bien 23 dans la ville de Goma. Et actuellement, les activistes sont menacés par ces mêmes terroristes bien 23. Actuellement, il faut ce qu'on appelle leur soi-disant couvre-feu. Et quand ils tombent sur un activiste, ça devient leur proie. Il y a par exemple des activistes qui ont été déjà portés disparus dans la ville de Goma. Et actuellement, à cette même occasion, je vous partage notre camarade qui peut quand même un peu essayer de me compléter. C'est un activiste Baraka qui sera aussi appuyé par les camarades de Moïse Hangi. Moïse Hangi qui est aussi activiste de la lucha et Baraka Al-Christ qui est aussi activiste de la lucha. Mais Al-Christ va nécessairement nous parler trop sur les conséquences du terrorisme, soit de la présence du M23 par rapport au parc national de Virunga dans le cadre des écosystèmes et le système climatique. C'est un peu ça. Al-Christ, vous pouvez y aller. Après, ça sera Moïse.
Bonjour, je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez. Oui, je vous entends. Moi, c'est Baraka, je suis un activiste de la lucha, mais aussi j'interviens beaucoup plus dans les cadres de l'environnement. Comme mon ami Pilier m'a demandé de partager un peu la situation de l'activisme armé dans le parc de Virunga. Bon, il s'y est de rappeler ici que c'est depuis 2022 que nous avons commencé des actions pour lutter contre l'activisme armé dans le parc national de Virunga, qui est patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO. Et à notre grande surprise, on a constaté beaucoup de groupes armés qui sont soutenus par des politiciens congolais et d'autres multinationales et européens, américains, qui tirent les ficelles dans ces conflits-là. Ils sont en train d'exploiter les bois. Ils coupent les bois pour fabriquer les charbons pour la fabrication, pour l'utilisation, pour préparer la nourriture. Voilà un peu ce qu'ils sont en train de faire, mais aussi ils se lancent dans l'exploitation du pétrole. Il y a des zones de gisement qui sont pétroliers qui sont signalés dans le parc national de Virunga. Et ce groupe armé, il s'octroie les biens de commencer à exploiter et voire même il commence à exploiter le pétrole. Tout ça, c'est au détriment de la population locale, de la population autochtone qui vit à la souffrance de ces groupes armés qui sont soutenus malheureusement par les puissances extérieures, mais aussi par nos propres dirigeants qui devraient nous protéger. Bon, voilà un peu comment est-ce que l'activisme des conflits armés affecte l'environnement. Il y a notre ami qui a parlé de l'environnement. C'est le cas qui est en train de se manifester en République démocratique du Congo actuellement. Voilà un peu. Merci.
D'accord, d'accord. Là, recevez, c'est mieux. Super. Alors, j'étais en train de dire que je vais devoir compléter les interventions des prédécesseurs, entre autres Pulier et Baraka Chris. Je suis aussi un activiste de la lucha, qui est un très grand mouvement citoyen en République démocratique du Congo. Alors, les amis ont parlé de la situation tragique et trop critique que traverse notre pays, très particulièrement la ville de Goma et Bukavu, qui sont sous le contrôle présentement des terroristes du M23 soutenus par les Rwandais et des grandes entreprises multinationales, le M23 qui sont en train aujourd'hui de massacrer inhumément nos compatriotes et qui continuent aussi à exploiter les ressources naturelles du Congo. Al-Kwisi a parlé maintenant des impacts environnementaux sur l'exploitation des ressources naturelles dans le parc national du Virunga, mais il y a également des minéraux qui sont exploités en cascade au niveau du Nord Kivu, très précisément à Rubaya, des cassitérites, des cobaltes, des cuivres. Alors, il faut donc comprendre que la situation qui se passe en RDC est vraiment très préoccupante et c'est une crise qui est alimentée par des grands messieurs, des grandes entreprises, des terroristes en tout cas, qui ont un grand réseau, un très grand circuit au niveau international. Pili a parlé de la surmilitarisation de la ville. Maintenant, nous qui sommes à Goma, nous sommes confinés. Même l'occasion ici de nous exprimer, on le fait parce qu'on est à la maison, on essaie un peu de se cacher, mais la situation est extrêmement catastrophique. Nous pouvons également admettre et avouer qu'il y a en fait la faiblesse de l'autorité de l'État, le gouvernement qui est le nôtre, alors présidé par Félix Tshisekedi, qui est notre chef de l'État, n'est pas à mesure de garantir la sécurité de nos populations et de notre pays. Alors, je suis très brièvement honoré. Je suis vraiment très ravi de ces cadres que vous nous accordez. Et je pense que nous allons éventuellement nous édifier. Nous serons aussi très honorés d'avoir aussi votre coup de main, votre coup de pouce par rapport à la situation qui se passe au Congo. Autant que je sais qu'à travers le monde, plusieurs autres pays aussi ont des problèmes particuliers. Mais nous, en tout cas, le terrorisme pas son plein, les tueries, le massacre ou alors les phénomènes des groupes armés, c'est presque ici où en tout cas ça prend une ampleur très inquiétante. Alors, je ne peux que présentement vous remercier. Je pense que c'est pour une première, si pas la deuxième occasion, de vous avoir, mais je crois qu'on va collaborer suffisamment et nous partager autant de choses ensemble. Je suis très content pour ce cadre et je vous remercie encore une fois et je suis disposé à répondre à des questions ou des préoccupations s'il y en a, évidemment. Merci.
The situation is not good. There's the M23 terrorists backed by the Rwandan government. And they were backed by the Western powers like the US, and also Great Britain, France, the European Union. We're intervening here just to say there's militarization at several posts in different areas in the DRC. We didn't start this yesterday or the day before. We started doing this right after our founding. We started doing action to fight so that MONUSCO would leave DRC. That organization is not efficient. There's no good results from that organization. Right now, we're trying to really get through this really tough situation. In 2019, we started a campaign that was Bye Bye MONUSCO. And that campaign was to say that MONUSCO needs to leave. And that thing did not happen. And that was very sad. And so now we did another campaign, MONUSCO Get Out. And we have a lot of people who joined the chat. And concerning the rebellion of the M23 terrorists, we were saying MONUSCO needs to leave the country. And let the country, our country negotiate. But MONUSCO didn't leave. And they but MONUSCO didn't leave, and it made the situation with the terrorists even worse. And the troops, we were asking that all these troops to not come. Oh, okay, wait. In 2019, after the departure of the former president Joseph Kabila, their social structure and
Por ejemplo, fuimos enfrente de las instalaciones militares.
Launched sit-ins and action in front of the installations of these forces, refusing at the same time the deployment of the EAC troops. After all these actions, the Congolese government spokesman and the spokesman of the UN representing the DRC reportedly promised that the MONUSCO troops would leave the DRC gradually, with the last element leaving in December 2024. That promise has not yet been fulfilled. Despite these actions, the EAC troops were finally deployed in North Kivu and Ituri, and the two provinces under threat of rebellions supported by neighboring countries and a Western stranglehold to plunder our wealth and mineral resources. After several actions, the Congolese government had also established the ineffectiveness of these EAC troops and decided to leave the latter. The M23 RDF terrorists conquered the tourist town of Goma because the government rejected our proposals and they killed more than 3,000 civilians. There's activist Baraka. So now someone else is going to tell us about the activism happening around. So now we're going to listen to Chris. Juste pour demander, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Oh, okay. So I'm Baraka. I'm an activist who does a lot of expensive protection, like my friend outlined. The situation of activism ever since 2022, we started lots of actions to fight against the army of Rwanda and MONUSCO. And to our surprise, we saw a lot of armies that are helped by the Congolese army and also Europe and the States. They're putting in laws they're using a lot of coal for fabricating to prepare food. There's a lot of exploitation of the petrol. And there's a lot of things like that happening in the national parks. And they're exploiting the natural gas. And the suffering that this armed group is doing is helped not only by foreigners but also by our own leaders. And that's how the army is affecting our environment. This is how it's manifesting in the DRC. Thank you. That's a little bit of what's happening.
Thank you so much to
that are really under the hand of the tutor. And that's sustained by Rwanda and lots of big international groups. And they're conducting massacres and they're exploiting the natural resources of the Congo. Baraka talked about the environmental impact and the exploitation. And there's also minerals that are being exploited in North Kivu. There's cobalt and copper. The situation that's happening in the DRC is very preoccupying. And it's really the big figure and the big terrorists that are acting on an international level. So us who are in Goma, we're confined. We stay at home, we try to hide. and the situation is extremely catastrophic. I want to add that there is the weakness of the state. Our head of state is not able to secure the security of our people in our country. So I'm very honored and very happy to hear this this agenda that you have prepared. We're very honored to have your help also with the situation that's happening in the Congo. Everywhere in the world, there's lots of countries that have very particular situations. For us, the terrorism, the killings, the massacres, the armed groups, and a very, very preoccupied. I think this is the second time that we've been able to talk to you. And I'm excited to share more things together. And thank you very much. I'm also at this position to answer questions. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Moise and Javier, and all of our. Thank you so much, Moise and Javier, and all of our friends and comrades from La Lucha. It's not often that we get to hear directly from people on the ground in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and those who have also been driven out of the DRC because of the intense violence and massacres that are being conducted by the state and on behalf of the state and by neighboring Rwanda, all in the name of profit for the extraction of the resources in the DRC and against the will of the people. It's so inspiring to hear about how you're struggling against it and building this movement to resist. We thank you so much for being here. And yes, in our anti-militarism agenda, we've also included a little bit more detail about that. But we hope that people will also access more information about Lucha. We have links in the chat to do so. So thank you again for being here with us today. I'm also very honored to introduce now our next speaker, who is coming to us from Jordan and will be speaking about the situation on the ground in another part of the world, which is really bearing the brunt of US-backed war and militarism, the most horrific genocide being conducted right in our midst in Gaza. I'm very honored to bring our speaker, Mariam Al-Jaja, from the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature. Mariam is the general manager of the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature. She holds a BA in International Development from Leeds University, a graduate diploma in economics, and an MSc in development economics from SOAS University of London. She is an expert on the topics of food sovereignty, environment, and land tenure, and has facilitated international and Arab civil society delegations in international platforms to address the right to food and environmental protection and accountability in the context of war and occupation. So excited to hear about the struggles on the ground there, and most importantly, about the resistance which is ongoing in the face of this genocide. Mariam, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, and thank you so much to ILPS for always reminding us that our pain is one and that our struggle and action should be one. So I'm going to speak mostly about Palestine, where the alliance between capitalism, imperialism, and settler colonialism has resulted in one of the most gruesome and most documented genocides in our modern history, and it's carried out with full impunity. And before I begin with, into what we do as a green resistance movement, just to highlight a few things about USA's military and financial support to Israel. So by far, USA is the biggest supporter of Israel, of course, financially and militarily. USA provides Israel with around 4 billion US dollars yearly. But since October 2023, USA has provided Israel with over $22 billion in military aid. And these, companies that provide these arms are not only fueling the genocide, but there are also major profiteers from this genocide, such as, Boeing, BlackRock, and all these companies. And they're using Gaza as a testing ground to their military equipment. For instance, there is especially the ones that are related to artificial intelligence. And for instance, there's a company called Extend, and it's been used to drop these very precision drones on the people of Gaza. And as you know, the majority of the people who are dying there are civilians, and they are mostly women and children. But of course, men are also victims of this huge and gruesome genocide. But beyond military support, USA has been vetoing all UN Security Council resolutions, but that do not only relate to Palestine or the settler colonialism in Palestine, but also the invasion of Lebanon and now the occupation of further lands in Syria. But what is really, painful to us. It is not, of course, imperialism has a head, which is USA, but it also has many tails. And there are many Western countries, specifically European countries, that are supporting this war. But we also see countries in our region, and this is extremely, dangerous. It's also enabling this genocide. I don't know if you've seen in the past week the huge, agreements and contracts between USA and many of the countries in the region. Some that go up to 600 billion. Others over $1.5 trillion in investments, either in AI or the arms industry. And we also see countries such as Turkey that is allowing 70% of Israel's fuel that really enables its warfare coming through Turkey. So it's really important that we always speak about, extraterritorial obligations and the complicity of all states, and trying to, advocate for all these boycott campaigns and sanctions against countries that are, enabling this genocide. So moving on. So genocide has many forms, specifically in Gaza, and one of them is the one we confront on a daily basis as APN. And it's the starvation war. Genocide through starvation has been happening since the establishment of the colonial state of Israel, but now more so. And since October 2024, Israel has destroyed 80% of Gaza's agricultural sector and cropland. They've also destroyed half of the greenhouses and wells, and this is an estimation from the end of last year. So things are much worse now. They've destroyed Gaza's entire fishery sector, all the ports or the fishing boats. And, there's a systematic attack on everybody who's trying to fish in the sea or to cultivate. And international organizations are at best passive and silent about what's happening. They refuse to call it a famine, although the famine is very evident in Gaza at the moment. We've all seen the numbers of the children dying because of malnutrition. And another thing that we're witnessing is that these organizations or international organizations are not intervening in any way that is sustainable, that roots people to the ground in Gaza. So they're sending some humanitarian aid when they can, and that it has been over 3 months that nothing has gone into Gaza at all. No food, no fuel, no water, nothing. But these organizations, when they had the chance to rehabilitate the agricultural sector in Gaza or the local food system, they never did that. So here comes the importance of our work as independent grassroots movements that believe in resisting the roots of, you know, genocide and oppression. And some of you know about our work in Palestine, which started during the Second Intifada, to replant all the trees that are being burnt, uprooted, you know, indigenous trees of Palestine. We've planted over 3 million fruit trees across historic Palestine. But when it came to Gaza this time, we couldn't, you know, stand idly watching this genocide. And we started our Gaza revival, farmland revival campaign in March. And we started, you know, entering seeds into Gaza, although it was forbidden by the Israelis at the beginning. And we were able to plant over 1,100 dunams of fast vegetable crops in Gaza to combat the famine. And what we were able to do is to really reduce the prices of the crops that we were, you know, exposing to the markets all the time. We believe we broke the siege in a way, because we, you know, enabled the farmers in Gaza to feed their people without reliance on foreign food imports and food aid. But you know that the demand is really big, and cultivating these lands is not sufficient. So we need everybody's efforts to stop this genocide and to open an unrestricted, you know, a flow of food and inputs of production into Gaza. Now, later I will show you some of the pictures of the crops we did together as ILPS and APN, where ILPS, you know, we gathered our financial support to be able to plant a few dunams in Gaza. But we also started now a campaign to revive South Lebanon's agricultural lands, because Israel has been also uprooting and stealing indigenous trees and burning over 800 hectares of olives in Lebanon. So we do not believe in the borders that colonialism has imposed in our region, and this is how we are resisting. We're resisting across borders. So before I went to end, it's really important that we really amplify our common strategy and common action. And I do believe we can have an impact as long as we remain independent in our funding and in our agenda. And we are here if you have, you know, if anybody wants to, you know, find out more about how you can support us in different ways in Gaza as we cultivate the lands of Gaza. And I want to ask maybe Rhonda and dear friends, if you can show some of the pictures from the potatoes we have planted together.
Thank you so much, Mariam. As you were speaking, actually, we decided to start showing some of the photos because they really great. Just demonstrate the way that the Revive Gaza's Farmland project is taking on the need. You know, we talked about the state not only neglecting its people in some areas of the world, but actually the state of the Zionist entity committing genocide outright, committing genocide through famine, and, you know, using all its different ways to kill the people of Gaza, of Palestine, and that the people themselves need to resist and find ways to replant, feed the people, fish for the people, even as the Zionist entity tries to destroy the land, destroy the water and the air. And, you know, some of these photos are on the screen right now. I don't know if you'd like to take a moment to explain any of them, but they're really quite beautiful in the way they portray, you know, another aspect of the struggle for survival and resistance.
To be honest, Rhonda, the situation is extremely difficult now in Gaza. Our team is, you know, being displaced for maybe the 20th time. They're running from one camp to another, from one school to another.
Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to be with us today, Mariam. I know it's the horrors that we're all seeing unfold on the screen, and everybody trying to do as much as we can from outside to support the
Yeah, I'm
resistance.
sorry. I had to take a moment, but I was gonna
Yes.
say that the way they're describing the situation right now, it's like the end of time. They're saying their goodbyes, and although we it's very, very difficult to us, but we also take our spirits and our hopes from them. They within these situations, they still uplift our morals, and that's why we can never we can't give up. We can't lose hope. So we don't have the privilege of losing hope. So we invite you all to be with us.
Thank you so much, Mariam. And I'm seeing so much in the chat. From the river to the sea, yes, Gaza will be free. The other day on our anti-militarism launch program, we weren't able to have Mariam on the call live because of the time difference, but we did play a clip from the iconic freedom fighter, Layla Khaled, who talked about the ongoing resistance of the Palestinian people against the Zionist occupation and genocide, and how it does take all forms, replanting the land, ensuring food for the people, standing ground, armed struggle, all for the liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. And that resistance continues now. And we are all here as a testament to the solidarity that the world's people can show in standing up for, in fighting in our own struggles and in solidarity with the Palestinian people as they resist and continue their fight. So thank you again, Mariam. And we thank Arab Group for the Protection of Nature for the work that you're doing. Okay. And as we continue on in this webinar, we have just a few more speakers who will be joining us today. The next one will be coming to us from the Netherlands. And when we think about and see, you know, the war on the people, the occupation of Gaza, the state violence being enacted on the people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we know that the U.S. and its main allies are backing this violence against and aggression against the people every step of the way, every cent of the bombs that are dropped, of the bullets that are funded against the people. So much of that is backed by the United States and its allies. Among those includes NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And that's why this summer, the Resist US-led War movement and many other organizations on the ground in Europe are taking on NATO at its summit in the Netherlands this June. And they've formed, or we've all formed, a coalition called the Resist NATO Coalition to oppose NATO. So for our next speaker, I'm very honored to bring here Lila with Vito, who is part of the Resist NATO Coalition. Lila is a teacher and a cultural worker based in the Netherlands, involved in autonomous organizing around housing and labor issues. Lila is also a member of Vito, an anti-militarist, anti-imperialist coalition of organizations and collectives in the Netherlands that organize against the annual National Arms Fair and the 2025 NATO Summit in The Hague. As an active member of Vito, Lila is invested in different forms and strategies of fighting militarism every day, from political education to cultural activism. Lila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I want to say thank you so much to all the previous speakers, and to Mariam. It was very touching. And indeed, I want to say that we cannot afford failure or despair, that we have to keep resisting, especially all of us that are in the belly of the beast in Europe and the US, and get involved in direct actions also to force our governments to at least stop the arms trade and the crazy militarization that is happening. So today I want to talk a little bit about what veto is and what we've been doing also with Resist NATO. Veto is a coalition of different anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist collectives and organizations across the Netherlands. And it stands for Verzet tegen Oorlog, which is resistance against war. We formed as a coalition in August last year after organizing for the second time the mobilization and a duration of 10 hours protest against NEDS. NEDS is the Netherlands Exhibition for Defense and Security, which is basically an arms fair that happens yearly in November. We built our coalition along 3 unity points that define our position and guide our action. We resist imperialist war and its infrastructure of death. We fight militarism in our communities, and we promote international solidarity and support people's resistance. And I'm going to use these points to describe our actions this past year, since as a coalition, we're really young. First, we see that the US military industrial complex, NATO, and all the rearmament projects that have popped up in the European Union are the embodiment of imperialism, and therefore they are the biggest threats to people and the planet. We resist all forms of oppression born of imperialism, Zionism, systemic racism, climate injustice, and so on. And we support and actively participate in the fights against all oppression, and that is why we aim for a broad but militant coalition. We especially reject the trend of imperialist war using women as tool for justification of intervention. And this year we participated also in the local 8 of March demonstrations, stressing how liberal feminism is instrumentalized in defense and the devastating consequences of NATO and the US military outposts in the global south on women's well-being and liberation. In our work, we target manifestations of imperialist war, such as the arms fair that I mentioned earlier, and we support direct actions and demonstrations against weapons companies, investors within the weapons industry, and military infrastructure. In April, we worked together with Geen Ruimte voor Defensie, which is a coalition in Friesland in the north of the Netherlands, in organizing educations, but also a protest against the Ramstein flag military exercise. And the protest was in the military base in Leeuwarden. We also mobilized against the upcoming NATO summit that from 95 million that was supposed to cost now costs 183 million euros, from all gone from the national budget, and disrupts already for months the livelihood of hundreds of locals in the city of The Hague. They closed down a part of the city center, and checkpoints are being installed to ensure the safety of the warmongers. I will talk a little bit more about the NATO summit at the end of the talk. For the second unity point, the fight militarism in our communities, I have to say that the military has been exploiting communities, particularly those that are nationally and economically oppressed, treating them as recruitment pools for imperialist ventures. So working class migrant neighborhoods are targeted with police repression and at the same time recruiters. They have an active program for the poorest neighborhoods here in Rotterdam South. Young people are lured with the promises of benefits, money, and the allure of defending the nation. And simultaneously, the military's presence is incessantly glorified in public spaces and popular culture, as well as in schools, reinforced by a relentless stream of propaganda that normalizes participation in global imperialist domination. We have seen an intensification of that with the NAVO door Netherlands tour, which is basically a tour of NATO around the Netherlands that manifests itself in public photo exhibitions, like these traveling exhibitions that you might have seen in other places where NATO summits were happening, talks in universities and schools, even primary schools, mural competitions, and a mobilization of the cultural sector of The Hague to organize a festival called Just Peace, repeating the propaganda that NATO is in the city of peace and justice to ensure peace and security. Healthcare, at the same time, healthcare, welfare, culture, and educational budget are slashed as military budgets are increasing. This is in the whole Europe, not only the Netherlands. And the university administrations here in the Netherlands actively promote and normalize working with defense to acquire funding for dual-use research. So our work has been dedicated to exposing and challenging the structural forms of exploitation, campaigning against targeted recruitment in libraries specifically, and being active amongst student organizing against militarization of education. We have worked with student groups in disrupting events where NATO officials and Ministry of Defense representatives warmonger among students, trying to normalize this state of emergency in education and justify the slashing of budgets. For the NATO summit, we also mobilize cultural workers to use cultural tactics to counter the propaganda, but also find ways to organize together and boycott art washing of war that is happening now in the case of NATO. Lastly, we uphold international solidarity with people's struggles across the globe, including the recognition of the right to self-determination, economic and food sovereignty, and self-defense of nations and oppressed people from reactionary aggression and violence. We align ourselves with resistant movements across the world and seek to build meaningful relations across borders and struggles in striving for a world free of imperialism. A big focus of our energy has been in disseminating and facilitating education to arm ourselves with a grounded base to understand and analyze the system of imperialism and be able to counter the propaganda, because this is a big issue, I think, in most of the Northern Europe, the liberal Europe. We counter the propaganda attempts to dehumanize people on the ground using counter-terror as a front for neocolonial tactics that delegitimize efforts of liberation. And we see how dehumanization abroad results in banning of organizations, ideas, and demonstrations here, normalizing genocide and death. We therefore have supported blockades and occupations that link with struggles of national liberation, especially the student intifada here in the Netherlands, in their efforts to push their institutions to boycott and divest from the Zionist entity and weapons industry that profits from the genocide in Gaza and the occupation of Palestinian land. Since we were mobilizing against the NATO summit, we joined Resist NATO campaign in the launch. We joined in the 2025 launch of their campaign, and some of us distributed ourselves between education and the counter summit working groups. As part of the education working groups, we worked on propaganda material that counter NATO's propaganda. We distributed that in festivals and social spaces as a way to mobilize people to join the campaign and also organize in their own localities. And we also participated in developing the webinar on NATO and the rise of the far right, focusing on the need for strategic alliances for a united anti-fascist, anti-imperial, anti-war movement that is univocally against NATO. And the next month, we have a bit of a sprint. There are different mobilizations from educations, propaganda posters, pop-up exhibitions, protest prop, banner making sessions, all countering NATO propaganda. And on the 20th of June, we organized a workshop on mobilizing cultural workers and organizations in The Hague against washing of NATO's crimes. Because, as I mentioned before, the propaganda goes very deep with the majority of cultural institutions and events this month in The Hague, especially being co-opted as part of the Just Peace Festival. And on Saturday, 21st of June, there is the Counter Summit organized by NVB and Resist NATO. And there will be more events in the morning of the 22nd, as well as a large mobilization in The Hague on the 22nd of June, which is a Sunday. And there is a lot of mobilization from education events to direct action camps as well happening. So if anyone is in Europe and would like to join remotely or in person, join the Resist NATO campaign or contact Vito and you can decide how you want to get involved. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leela, for letting us know about the ways and the many different ways and tactics that Vito is engaging in the struggle against war and militarism, and the importance of exposing the lies of NATO, the US, and all of these warmongers who are trying to paint the people on the ground who are the victims of war, who are the ones who are struggling to maintain their homelands, to maintain the sovereignty of their countries, to maintain the patrimony of their countries, demonizing us as a terrorist, when really we know that the biggest war makers in the world, the US, the NATO countries, and all of their allies are actually the biggest terrorists in the world. So thank you for reminding us of that. And thank you for also letting us know that next month, the Resist NATO Coalition will be confronting NATO and, right at its doorstep as it meets in The Hague with education that exposes its true nature and brings the anger of the people onto the streets to oppose it. Thank you, Leela. Please check out the chat for links to Resist NATO. And for more on the campaign against NATO, actually, you can also look in the anti-militarism agenda of Resist US-led war movement. We've been taking on NATO for a number of years now, and we'll continue to do so until it's in the dustbin of history. So thank you. Next up, I would like to shift our focus back over to Asia and the another front of US-led war, which is in its run-up, its building, its escalation of aggression against the DPRK and against China, against all the peoples of the region in its attempt to try and hang on to its grip in Asia and in the Pacific. Really excited and honored to bring here today Echo from Korea Peace Now, one of our newest members of the Resist US-led war movement. Korea Peace Now is a campaign calling for an official end to the Korean War. KPN educates US policymakers and the general public about the urgent need to end the war in order to reunite families and improve the lives of millions of people living on the Korean Peninsula and around the world. KPN works to change the narrative on the Korean War by highlighting stories that illustrate the ongoing human costs of unresolved conflict. Echo, really happy to have you on, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rhonda and Carly and Cody, some of you who I met over Zoom and in person when I was in Seattle in April. And thank you for your team effort to bring Korea Peace Now to join the Resist Coalition. As Carly mentioned earlier today, we cannot win this fight without being arm in arm in solidarity with each other. So we firmly believe that this coalition is necessary and strategic. Briefly about Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network, we educate, advocate, and organize to end the Korean War. Ending the Korean War with the peace agreement is our main campaign, although as you may know, there are so many layers to this. For example, countering the demonization of DPRK, educating the public about the continued impact of the war, because the war, technically the active fighting ended with an armistice in 1953. So gathering the public opinion that we must end this war, not halted in an armistice, gets harder and harder every year as it's hard to break the status quo. And a lot of people just don't know that Korean War hasn't ended. So, and that this is mainly US-led war, that South and North Korea themselves cannot end this war. So this is what we're facing at this time. I also hope that you can watch the video of the Friday recording, because a couple of our Korea Peace Now members have introduced Korea Peace Now work more in depth. Hayden and Johnny joined the Friday meeting. So I hope you can watch that video and learn more about Korea Peace Now. So Carly asked me to share some flashpoints in Korea today, and I narrowed it down to 3, although there are so many layers and many flashpoints. This year marks 75 years since the division of Korea. 80 years since the invasion of Southern Korea by the US. And most people may not have the concept that the US invaded Korea, but when a military comes into a country and lower the flag of the previous imperial regime, which was Japan in Korea's case, and raise their own American imperial flag, I'm not sure what to call this other than invading South Korea. There are some pictures in the next slide, which has like a little bit of the talking points. So the black and white picture you see in the slide is the lowering of the Japanese flag and raising the American flag. So I wanted to bring up that U.S. prolonging the Korean War is the first flashpoint, which is the main issue. According to Professor Bruce Cummings, a well-known historian, the Korean War was the origin of the military-industrial complex. And this MIC is still fattening the pockets of the warmongers and the weapons contractors. And demonization of DPRK, China, Russia, these are all needed for a continued deterrence and need to place, for example, THAAD missile system on the Korean land, et cetera, to continue this term. My second flashpoint is the continued joint war drills, now worse with US ROK alliance that was formed in 2023 during the Biden administration. More than 270 days in 2024, these joint war drills took place in Korea. In March this year, as they were starting one of the major war drills, a bomb was accidentally dropped in an area called Pocheon. In the slide, you see the picture of the house with the destroyed roof. This is just one of the pictures. And this Pocheon area is near the South and North Korea border. If accidentally it had dropped slightly to the northern of Pocheon, it would have been DPRK, and this could have started another Korean War. I also brought a picture of 2023 on the right down corner, right bottom. A group of South Korean activists went to one of the war drill sites and they protested, literally putting their bodies and to demand that the US ROK and Japan stop their war drills. The last flashpoint I wanted to bring is the human cost of division and the military spending. So those most impacted by militarized police choices here in the US includes women, LGBTQI people, gender diverse people, Black and Indigenous people, Arab and Muslim communities, diasporas, and communities of color. And the peace economy can allow us to invest our tax dollars in our community care, healthcare, childcare, housing, food assistance, education, clean energy, and climate change mitigation, and guarantee the human security with safe communities and bringing the human dignity. And in Korea, for Korean people, Korean divided families are aging. So the first generation who are split due to the war, many of them have passed away before reuniting with their families. And for the Korean Americans who used to be able to travel to DPRK for a family reunion, due to Trump's travel ban, which he placed in 2017 during his first administration, he recently actually renewed it. The renewal usually happens in July or August, but he renewed it very early. It's only May. And these are preventing these reunions. So some of the action steps I wanted to bring, what can you do to take action on the ongoing Korean War? So the travel ban that I mentioned, if you can please sign the petition. This is very new. This only happened last week. So we want you to sign the travel ban letter. And the second action that you can participate, you see my virtual background. We are hosting 10th year of Korea Peace Advocacy Week in June. It'll start on June 9th. The deadline to register to do the advocacy is Monday, midnight. So if you could please sign up to join the advocacy days. The Congressional Constituent Advocacy is our inside-outside strategy. We educate the Congress and the public about the Korean War. We advocate to formally end this war with the peace agreement. There is a bill in the Congress, HR 1841, Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act, which we want to gain support from the members of Congress and elected officials and the senators. So thank you, Resist US-led War, for organizing this opportunity to share about our work. And I hope to see you over in a Zoom for another meeting or webinar or in action in front of the White House or on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Echo, for your words and for talking about some very concrete ways that our folks who are here on the webinar now, or folks that will watch this later or pick up our anti-militarism agenda, concrete steps that people can take to act in solidarity with the calls of KPN for an end to the Korean War, peace in the Korean Peninsula, an end to the buildup to war in Asia and the Pacific. And thank you for also drawing the connections to the many other struggles that are happening in the world. It's not Korea alone, it's not the Korean people alone who are resisting against US militarism in the region, but us together that are opposing that US militarism and buildup to war. So thank you for that. We are happy and honored to welcome up the last speaker that we have for our webinar today. Joining us from Canada, this is Yasmin from the International League of People Struggle Canada. ILPS is the acronym. ILPS in Canada is a chapter of the Global Alliance of ILPS. This chapter is ILPS and ILPS Canada, a democratic anti-imperialist coalition that supports the struggles of workers, youth, children, women, indigenous peoples, small farmers, professionals, and other exploited and oppressed sectors of society against the economic, political, military, social, and cultural domination and attacks of imperialism and reaction. For Resist US-led War movement, we thought it'd be really appropriate to end our different lineup of speakers today with a person from North America, based in Canada, taking on the imperialist war machine from within, the imperialist beast, and a very concrete campaign and struggle that ILPS Canada has against both the state and the weapons corporations. So very happy and honored to bring Yaz to the webinar today. The floor is yours, Yaz.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate the invite from Resist to talk about some of the anti-imperialist work that's happening in Canada, both anti-imperialist and anti-militarization. So I think what I want to start with is Canada has had this myth for a very long time that it is a peaceful country. It's for democracy. It's a place where, there's no racism, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things as ILPS Canada, we want to expose the Canadian imperialism imperialism. We want to expose the militarization and that happens not only abroad but its own people. The history of Canadian imperialism against its own indigenous people has been horrific and is continuing to this day. So just wanted to give that context as well. In terms of some of the anti-militarization work that ILPS Canada has been doing, it's been since 2022, we have particularly taken on a campaign of anti-militarization because the Canadian military industrial complex that nobody talks about is about an industry worth of $10 billion. And it primarily relies on the exports to US, Israel, Ukraine, and Saudi Arabia. And then as a member of both the G7 and NATO, it plays a key role in the Western imperialist sphere. So we want to make sure that we expose the real face of Canadian imperialism. Now, as part of its army military industry, one of the main manifestations of that is CANSEC. And it is put up with by a lobbying group of weapons industries. They get money from the government, the Global Affairs of Canada, which is on deals with foreign policy and all that. And they put this arms dealer convention. It is the biggest one in North America every year. And it has 12,000 attendees, 300 exhibitors, weapons companies, people from different countries, everybody's there making billion-dollar deals to buy weapons. And the Zionist entity is the only state or entity that is an exhibitor there. Most countries are there to buy weapons, but Israel is the only one that is there to show off its weapons, and it's marketed as tested, battle tested, which obviously means tested on the Palestinian and citizens of Gaza. So it's a pretty disgusting convention that happens every year, and we've been protesting the local community has been protesting since the beginning of it has been happening. It has had different names. ILPS Canada sort of took it up in 2022, and we're building mobilizations and awareness about it. Even people in the city itself didn't know that this was happening. So every year we've been building, a momentum against it to shut it down, not only in the city, but in the whole country. Like, we shouldn't be having these kind of conventions of armed trades dealing and whatnot. And most companies who are at that convention are directly involved and complicit in the genocide that's happening in Gaza and Palestine. And we've been building the strength every year to a point where we are able to lock it down for the whole day. It's a 2-day event, and so far we've been able to block it half the day, take over the roads, delay their program, all that kind of stuff. And we hope one day we can just shut it down. So that's one of our main campaign that happens every year. So people are welcome. It is happening at May 28, 29 this year. And this year we're hoping to do 3-day events. They have a pre-reception dinner. We are hoping to disrupt that. A major protest on May 28, and maybe a car rally on May 29. So we will I can share the links and whatnot, and hope if people from the US can come, that'll be great. Canada has been the longest ally of US. We will see how the current political situation turns out, but it has been part of the Western imperialist sort of grouping, and has supported a US warmongering and militarization agenda all across the world. So that was on CanSec. Then 2 weeks later, Canada is hosting the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, which is a western province. The town is already under lockdown, and people cannot go in and out of it without checkpoints and proving that they live there or work there. So the security is pretty high. However, we have decided that we will be doing a counter summit and a protest. There are many things happening. The G7 summit is from the 15th to the 17th, and a lot of ILPS leading some activities, and then some other local groups and other partners are also doing activities. And basically, there will be counter G7 stuff happening from the 12th to the 17th in Calgary. You know, to make sure that this is happening in our backyard and make sure that our voices are heard. Then this year's meeting is focusing on technology, AI, global health crisis, and I love this term, international peace and security, which of course we can decode as militarism agenda, imperialist wars of aggression, and occupation and the continuing of genocide. So that's another event happening. So we are hoping to get people out there on the 14th and 15th. A little bit of context in the area where we're doing this is highly conservative, and not many anti-imperialist forces exist. So this is an opportunity to spark that unity on getting together and fighting for, fighting for a better world, but also fighting the manifestations of imperialism. And then all the G7 countries will be there deciding and making decisions, economic, political, military, for the people. And we want to make sure that our voices are heard, and that, that they know that we are here to stand up against it. There's some other sort of actions happening, which I obviously cannot talk about online, but once they will happen, it will be, we will definitely share and talk about the impacts of those. So that was basically in terms of our LPS Canada's anti-militarization campaign and exposing Canadian imperialism. For this year's, those are our two major focuses, and I hope that people can come. I invite especially our U.S. comrades and from Latin America, who are near the West Coast, please come to G7, and who are near the east side of Canada, please come to CanSec. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaz. Thank you to each and every one of our speakers today. Everyone, give a huge shout out to everyone who has spoken. Show your love in the chat. Throw out your emojis. I'm seeing them come through. This has truly been an incredible event. This is the power of our global movement against US-led war and for liberation everywhere. Thank you all so much for attending the entire program today, everyone. My name is Cody. I'm a member of the Resist US-Led War Global Secretariat, and I hope that you are all just as inspired as I am to have heard so much about what the struggle for just and lasting peace actually looks like on the ground, across continents. Truly, our movement does span every continent, and so our actions have to reflect this. I heard it said by multiple of our speakers today, but the people united will never be defeated. And our agenda is one of struggle, solidarity, and unity. It really does take a movement to coordinate between all of our struggles. And Resist US-Led War's mission is to be this movement that brings all of our struggles for just and lasting peace together, like we're doing right here. But we want to do it for action too. In Resist, we believe that it's the people of every nation, every country, of every homeland that know their own struggle for peace and liberation better than anyone else. And no one should be, from the outside, should be telling anyone how they should be fighting for their freedom and peace. But by being part of a global movement, we're reminded that no one needs to struggle alone, and that we have allies everywhere ready to stand in solidarity, as we've seen so much in the chat, all of the expressions of solidarity for the struggles that were mentioned here. And we can combine our struggles to confront US-led war and militarism with much more strength than when we were on our own. And so it's in this spirit that we want to invite all of you, if you have not yet done so, to join us in carrying out the calls of all of these campaigns of the anti-militarism agenda by joining the Resist US-led War movement. So I believe there was a link right here to our website that was just shared in the chat. If you agree with our manifesto that Rhonda talked about at the beginning, that's all it takes to join the movement. So go to our website, look at the manifesto. If you sign on to it, we'll get a notification and we'll be able to reach out to you to talk about how we can connect more via Resist. Also, if you feel so moved to support this movement in other ways, please consider donating. We have a link here to our donation page on our website. It takes so many resources, money, and many other resources to carry out this work, to print the materials like the anti-militarism agenda that we can hand out when we're hitting the streets, when we're going to workplaces, when we're going to communities, when we're going to schools, when we're going to villages, and handing out this material to say, this is the kind of movement we're building together. Putting on events like conferences, buying things for actions, things for sign makings, things for making banners and effigies. If your organization could donate $50, $20, even $10, it will go such a long way. So please, if you can, consider visiting this donation page and giving what you can. You can jump to the next slide. There were many events that were shared. Oh, I don't have to remind everyone that we have a all network meeting coming up. So if you join Resist, you can take part in our network meetings where you can hear more from the work that Resist members are doing on the ground. We can share about our upcoming campaigns and talk about tactics and strategy moving forward. Even if you're not an official member, please come on through. We have a link in the chat here to join and register for the meeting on June 7th. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. And if you go in there, you can see the time zone, the correct time in your time zone. And if you're interested in getting more involved besides just signing on to Resist and want to help us with some of this work, creating our campaigns, creating our materials here, working on our education, we actually have 2 global committees that are carrying out this work. We have our research and education committee that helps put together a lot of these materials. And we have a global membership and network committee that puts together a lot of these events for coordination that we have here. So if you join Resist via the manifesto, you can mention that you want to be part of one of these committees. This work is done by all of us together. We really hope you can join on and do some of this work together, and that hopefully it will support the work of your organization as well. There were many events that were shared by our speakers and others in the chat, and so I won't go too much deep into them, but I want to highlight some of them so that you all can jump in and get involved if you can. If you jump to the next slide, briefly, I want to mention we had the fight against both CanSec and the G7 summit that are happening in Canada that Yaz told us about. You can go to the link in the chat here to find out more. If you go to the next slide, we have Madres contra la Guerra is holding a action outside the military recruitment center in Puerto Rico on June 2nd. So join that if you're in the area, and you can help advance the movement against US-led war and against the predatory recruitment of youth into the war machine. If you jump to the next slide again, we have many campaigns that are included in the anti-militarism agenda that were mentioned in here. One is the Resist NATO campaign. Come out to the counter summit against the NATO summit in The Hague at the end of June 21 to 22nd. And there's also the upcoming webinar by the campaign against military base expansion of NATO states around the world on May 26th. Jump to the next slide. Other campaigns involved in that are included in the anti-militarism agendas. U.S. out of the Philippines. Join the U.S. out of the Philippines campaign by going to this link. And there's also an upcoming webinar hosted by Buy In USA on bureaucrat capitalism, public power for private gain, if you want to learn more about the economic impacts of US militarism, imperialism on countries like the Philippines. To the next slide again, we have the US out of Korea that was also spoken about. Join the US out of Korea campaign in the link here. And if you are in the area in July, from July 25th to 27th, consider registering for the People's Summit for Korea towards national liberation to organize to kick the US out of Korea once and for all. Go to the next slide one more time. And in terms of the, we have a Korea piece now. We have the Advocacy Week that Echo spoke about. That link was in the chat here too. And join the sign-on letter to end the travel ban on North Korea. Thank you for putting them in the chat. Go to the next slide again. Nake from Prutahi Guahan was speaking about the missile systems and radar systems in the islands of the Marianas. You can go to this link here to learn how you can give public comment against the militarization of Palau and the Takmor missile system that is militarizing the country. So one more slide. I think that's it. Yeah, there were many other calls to action. These were just a handful. If you're here on Zoom, look for them in the chat. If you're watching this as a recording after the fact, please go back, write down these links and get involved now. But if we can go really quickly before we close out to our website, if there's an event that you are working on or you heard about that was not involved here, you can go to our website on the Anti-Militarism Agenda campaign page, and here is our action calendar. Carly was talking about the action calendar as a component at the beginning of the event here, but there's this button you can see saying add your action to the calendar. That's right above. You can submit anything that you or your organization is planning, put it in here. You can see the example of some of the forms to fill out, and you can fill out how you want other people to get involved and take action, whether it's writing a solidarity statement, holding echo actions, coming to a national or even a global convergence. If you want to submit some of these ideas for us to include in the anti-militarism agenda, don't hesitate to submit it. Go to the campaign website and put it there. And with that, now that we have relaunched this campaign, the real work begins. In fact, the real work has been happening for years. It's been happening for decades, for centuries against the war machine. But especially the US war machine, the most brutal military force that the world has truly ever seen. The fight has never stopped, and it never will. Our hope in Resist is that through this campaign, we can carry forward the work a bit more coordinated, a bit more in step, and a lot more in solidarity. So to everyone who came here, to all of our speakers, thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for your struggle. We will see you out on the ground. We'll see you wherever the war machine tries to rear its ugly head, because wherever it does, the people are there, and the people united will never be defeated. Thank you, everyone. Long live international solidarity. Long live the fight for just and lasting peace.